At Northern Trust, we invest a significant amount of resources into look at the implications of regulation on our clients. We both look at the implementation of those regulations, but also focus on the wider context of what the regulatory change means to the business environment. This is really important when actually looking at strategy within your business as well as our own. We think it is very important not to deal with regulation in isolation, but to deal with those regulations under collective themes. We tend to use themes around asset safety, liquidity, transparency and total cost of ownership. Using asset safety, for example, there are a number of both regulatory items and infrastructure changes which are being implemented over the next 5 to 10 years that could actually reshape how you operate within the current landscape. A couple of examples of those are Target 2 securities from an infrastructure perspective, UCITS 5, AIFMD and EMIR all have an impact on actually how your assets will be held within the local market and how they're available for both from a liquidity perspective but also from a transparency and safety perspective. Another example would be total cost of ownership. It's becoming more important for funds to demonstrate the cost of all of the services that incorporate the fees in a fund. Now this has really come to light within the Dutch pension fund market, where TCO is really stretching past the execution stage, which was covered under MiFID, and moving more into the back office and more into the infrastructure that provide costs that add up to the overall fund fees. Now this is going to be a theme that will keep on growing as the regulators would like more transparency on what charges are being passed on to the end investor. Liquidity is going to be under much more pressure in the new regulatory environment. There are a number of different themes that will affect the liquidity provision within a cleared environment, but also within a trading environment as well. Current liquidity providers in terms of cash provision, particularly around variation margin, are going to be under pressure providing that liquidity due to regulations such as CRD4 and Basel III. This will mean that due to leverage ratios and their own capital requirements, cash liquidity and lending and credit could dry up in this environment. So it's very important when looking at your overall hedging and risk strategies that you're considering not only the impacts of these regulations on you, but actually what the impacts of these regulations are on your counterparts. The other area to consider around liquidity is securities liquidity and the importance of collateral in the new operating model. This plays very well to the asset safety point that we brought out in an earlier theme to make sure that your securities are in the right account structures to support the collateral requirements as we move forward through a post-clearing environment into a much shortened settlement cycle. As we're all very familiar with regulatory reporting and reporting requirements that we've had to implement over the last couple of years, the requirement for transparency across the whole value chain will keep on growing. So actually having the ability to analyse and see your data and use your information consistently multiple times through the life cycle of any transaction you've got is going to become more important. So instead of looking at reporting as single line items to meet your regulatory requirements, it's important to implement a strategy that will allow you to reuse that data for different purposes throughout the life cycle to deliver the transparency that both your clients and your regulators will need. To sum up, I think there's 3 key considerations that you need to take forward when looking at your overall regulatory strategy. Try and group things into themes. By grouping things into themes, you will actually be able to create a more cohesive strategy across multiple regulations. Understand what your counterparts are going to do for you and what business lines they will be supporting going forward. Their business models will change and the services they offer you will actually change also. And finally, it's important to engage with your counterparts and your partners. Northern Trust is here to help you discuss the wider implications of regulation, but also help you plan how to implement some of those strategies that can help you leverage the opportunity.